everybody. Here I am again, back at your inbox. Jackie Woodside here, the founder of the Curriculum for Conscious Living and the Conscious Living Summit, just coming right in to your home today. Thank you for being with us. I am beyond excited to bring to you a teacher that maybe you haven't been exposed to before, because she is incredibly renowned as a coach and teacher in Turkey, and is just beginning to make her debut here in the United States. And I have to say, I could not be more excited to be one of the people that's helping to launch her profile and her renowned reputation here in the United States. So I want to welcome my new friend and your colleague, EsraOgut, to the Conscious Living Summit stage. Esra, thank you for being with us and just sharing your wisdom with this audience today.
Oh, Jackie, thank you so much. I love everything that you do. Actually, my first interview ever in the US was the Abundance, summit.
Money Vibe Summit. Yeah.
Money Vibe Summit. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm so glad that, I kind of came out with you, let's say.
Yeah. You never forget your first, right?
Yeah, exactly. I will never forget you.
That's so awesome. Well, welcome. And because you are newer to the United States audience, and, I have to say, I was astounded at the loyalty and the love and reverence that your audience in Turkey had for you. I would know every time you would post something about the Money Vibe Summit, because I would get a flurry of people signing up to hear you, and just, it was just really extraordinary, the comments that people of your following had and how much they really just love you. But the US audience is just now getting to know you. So if you don't mind, just share a little bit about your process, your journey. It was such an interesting, spirit-filled journey that I could listen to you all day. But go ahead.
Oh my God, I could talk to you forever, Jackie. You just ask the best questions that gets the person to kind of think and then answer. So I love it.
Well, it's because I was a therapist for 30 years. It's an occupational hazard.
It's a good hazard to have. I don't know where to start with my journey, but I came to the US. I think I was like 23, 24. I had such a desire always to be in the US, and I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it's a past life thing or something.
Maybe.
So I finally made my way over here, and I was studying film at UCLA, and financially struggling a lot, because on a student visa, you're not really allowed to work. But of course, those are all the outward reasons of why I was, struggling. I came to find out. Because, when I thought about it, the subject matter of prosperity was, always some sort of a struggle for me ever since I remember. There was always this sense of lack, the sense of wanting more, just feeling like, oh my God, I don't think it's ever going to happen for me. So although I was, and then I finished school, I started working in the film industry. And, interestingly, I would do really well, good jobs, get hired. I had a chance and opportunity as an intern to work with, Oliver Stone. And there's another interesting story that's in the book about it. But it was like this situation where I would do great work and I would just never be able to get paid for it. And the outward reason would be like either because, you have a student visa, we can't pay you, or so-and-so international company can technically pay me, but then it's like something else and they all of a sudden don't have a budget after the work is done and they can't pay me. It's like, oh, we're so sorry. And so, it was this struggle of following my passion on the one hand, and at the same time, just trying to survive on a very minimal level. And to me, this coaching part of my journey. So anyway, I was involved in the industry, and then after 5 years of working really hard and still having such a hard time, even just paying rent.
Oh, wow.
I was like, you know what? I think I need some healing in my life. I was really kind of burnt out. So I'm like, forget Hollywood. I don't want to be, I'm done with Hollywood in 5 years, kind of a feeling. And then the next step was starting Kundalini Yoga. Which was life-changing for me, because at the time, I was really depressed. I had some drug stuff going on. I'm young and alone and struggling, in the US. And the journey of Kundalini Yoga really was the first shift, in my life. I remember going to the first class and just crying my eyes out, because Kundalini has that, like, it just is such a incredible technology where it just like pumps your unconscious mind to the surface. So you can be sitting down like really happy for 1 second, and then the next minute you're bawling. And there in that first class, I said, oh my God, I have a lot of inner healing to do. So I'm just going to forget about like, Hollywood career, this, that, the other thing. And I'm just going to start my inner healing. So that took, many, many years. And I was very surprised within 3 months, the depression lifted in a way that it never came back again. I stopped drinking, kind of abusing alcohol, and like just dropping the drugs was like, I just woke up one morning and I'm like, I'm never going to touch drugs again. And that was the case. It was just so the consciousness shift and the change in the frequency immediately allowed me to drop, the reality that didn't belong to that frequency.
Wow. Wait. Hold on. That's so good. So flush that out a little more. I was able to drop the reality that didn't belong to that frequency, and that, like, you didn't use this word, but like overnight transformation of consciousness that had you shed alcohol abuse and shed the drugs, shed the depression. That's pretty unusual. That many people, most people, struggle for years with their recovery. So flesh that out a little more.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, there was a tipping point where it ended up being an overnight decision, but there was a good 3 months of the Kundalini Yoga practice where I just so kind of felt it was a way to reconnect to my spirit again, that I was like kind of obsessed with it, and there I was just prior to the Kundalini Yoga journey, where I would like, go to bed at 5 and wake up at 5 the next afternoon. And then once the Kundalini Yoga came in, I was waking about at 4:30 in the morning to go to a 5 o'clock class at the yoga center. And my nightlife and everything just like, stopped, because I could see there was something so much more valuable here. So in that momentum of like, the breathing and the meditating and the moving and like releasing the toxins through the movement, releasing all this like kind of, overthinking in the mind with the meditation, that calming, pumping the hormones, all that momentum and the frequency rise that happens, when we have a disciplined practice like that, then it just became like, it just felt like I wasn't even doing anything, and things were just like dropping out of my life, left, right, and center. Wow. So it was a very powerful, like aha and experience. And one big realization is that I realized I had forgotten my spirit in a way.
Now, did you have a spiritual connection and grounding before the Kundalini Yoga?
No, I mean, not as a practice, but,
yeah.
I remember from a very young age, always being very like curious about existence, questioning it. Like even when I was 5 or 6, I hadn't even started school. Like, why are we on Earth? Like, what's the purpose? What exactly are we doing here? There's got to be more to life than just, get educated, make money, get married, have children, boom, that's it. Like there was always that search, but I didn't have a practice or a philosophy or anything like that to kind of channel that, into.
Okay. I like what you're saying, and I want to just pull this out a little bit. So one of your access points to conscious living, to awakening, was Kundalini Yoga. Yes. But one of the things that I love what you said, well, did you have a spiritual grounding? And you're like, well, but you said anytime you put yourself in a disciplined practice. So what I want our listeners to pull out is that phrase, right? So for you, it was Kundalini Yoga. I honestly have never practiced Kundalini Yoga. And, this is one of I have to share this with you, Esra. I might have said it before we got on the recording. One of my inspirations and motivations for doing this summit, the Conscious Living Summit, is that I do think that things like what does it mean to live consciously have kind of gotten twisted and misconstrued. So a lot of people now engage in yoga for increased strength and flexibility and maybe stress reduction. But what you're saying is that yoga and a specific practice of yoga was part of your awakening into conscious living, your awakening into consciousness.
Specifically Kundalini Yoga, though. I didn't find that in the practice of the other yogas I had tried previously. They were really good. They made me feel good. They made me feel good, in my body. But on the awareness, like kind of having these aha moments while you're in the actual practice, I find, for me anyway, in my residence, the Kundalini Yoga was like, I would just have an aha every single time I'm practicing, like this huge kind of an awareness or an understanding of like, oh, this is why my life isn't working. Oh my God, this is the part of me that like, needs love, attention, and healing. And oh my God, this is why I was, kind of doing the drugs. So with that understanding of the self, where more information and clarity comes about the self, then, you expand. And I mean, I want to go back to that frequency thing. We are vibrational beings.
Yes. Keep going.
First and foremost, we are vibrational beings. So what on earth are we doing with that vibration is a super important question to ask.
So great. So I just want to pause there and let's keep going with it. But again, for our listeners, I am a vibrational being. To just take that in, maybe even as you're listening, say that out loud. I am a vibrational being. And then I just love what you just said. What is it that we're going to do with our vibration?
So and it's like driving a car, what are we going to do with our vibration? Because we are a vibrational being, and there's like different, aspects to it. Like, how are we choosing to focus on our lives daily? Are we on the I don't have game, or are we on the there is, and there is this, and there is that already is, and thank you very much, and I'd like some more, and there is that focus? Even immediately, we have all these exercises in our courses. Like one of the things in our certification program where we train other coaches to kind of do, what we're doing, and it's a year-long program. As a part of that, they need to do their gratefulness exercises on video every single day.
On video?
Yeah. And they have to share it like for a year, over a year. And, it's really incredible because then we put up videos of when they first started and then a year after. And I swear to you, some of them are not even recognizable from the change of the vibration. And when, there are different ways to raise our frequency.
Yes.
And I don't say it in a way like, oh my God, we have to raise our frequency. No, it's not like that. We can if we choose, because
you get to raise your frequency. It's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity, exactly. And the way I like to describe it, I think this frequency thing, as you pointed out so well, is so important. It's like kind of, going into a building. When you go into a building, if you're just staying in the basement, you're not going to see much around. There's just maybe a wall in front of you. And you're like, life is so limited. No, life is not limited. You're in the basement. That's why you're not like seeing the more that is already there. And when you begin to raise your vibration, it's like getting on an elevator. And then all of a sudden you go maybe to the third floor. And it's like, oh, beyond this wall, there's a garden over there. And then you go, to level 5, and it's like, oh my God, there are the mountains. And then, oh my God, there's the, ocean. And then you go to the maybe top of the skyscraper, and it's like you perceive total infinity where all is possible. So, tying it back to the Kundalini Yoga experience that initially kind of started the disciplined practice, at least for me in my life. Yeah, I was in the basement. There were the drugs there, and there was the depression there, and there was the incredible feeling sorry for myself, like on a daily basis happening over there. And when that vibration and frequency started, raising, my life began to change.
So beautiful.
I remember the shocking thing. Sorry to cut you off. Like in my first class, I remember stepping outside of the studio and going like, oh my God, the colors look different. The color of the flowers look different. I could smell different, you know?
Yeah. Your senses just awaken. Yeah. I have to share this with you. My spouse used to say that life before our relationship had color, but after falling in love and committing and growing in our journey with one another, she says, I make life technicolor. our relationship, our marriage makes life go from, muted colors to technicolor. And love, as we both know and teach, is one of the vibrations that one of the experiences will raise your vibration into transcendence and into
exactly. And especially self-love.
Especially self-love. So say more about that.
I think, it's very easy to love ourselves when we're doing so well and we're feeling good and life is going great. My definition of self-love is like, how good at you are you in embracing your own shadows, embracing the jealousy, if that's what's going on, embracing the anger, instead of putting all these labels, especially in the spiritual world. It's like, oh, if you're angry, you're not spiritual. If you're in fear, you're not. No, I'm sorry, we're human, Oh, I lost you.
Oh, it's part of the human condition.
Yeah, it's a part of the human condition. So how far can we go to love the human condition? And of course, that starts with ourselves first. Can you be in fear and love that fear? Can you be in pain and love that pain? Because all those emotions, it doesn't mean you're not performing good. Those emotions are an indication of your inside asking you for attention so that you can become more whole.
Say more about that. So hold on. All of those lower emotions, the fear, the jealousy, the anxiety, they're emotions that are emerging to help you become more whole. Or we might say to be more conscious, to grow in consciousness.
Exactly. Now I'm going to jump to the coaching part of like one of the things we do a couple of different things, but one of the things is like to help people discover within themselves through asking questions to them and coaching them in a specific way to get them to see what are their belief systems around things. It could be about relationship, it could be about themselves, it could be self-concepts, it could be about abundance, as was my case when I found my belief system and was able to release, I got into more abundance. But since we got into it from the emotions, I'll give that example.
Okay.
So I was always known as the non-jealous woman. Like my boyfriends would be like, kind of like, I mean, do you ever get jealous? And I'm like, oh, no, I don't, and because in my mind, like, if there's a cheating or whatever's going on, it's like, oh, it's great. I'm getting the information. So I know that I'm not together with you, and I can move on. So it was never like in that sense a problem. But interestingly enough, after living with my husband for 4 years, and although he proposed to me within the first week, and I just resisted. There was just something about marriage where I'm like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to get married. I don't think I'm the marrying type, kind of all those things. So after 4 years of living together, we finally did get married. And it seemed to me almost overnight, I became a jealous person. And I could not believe what is going on.
What happened?
I have no idea. Like all I know is at the time, I didn't know what was going on. Later we figured it out. But like, here I am all my life in this like kind of an identity of like, yeah, I'm not a jealous person. And then overnight I have this intense jealousy going on, like in high levels. And it's very funny because originally when we met, he was the jealous person and we worked through that, with him, and he totally like healed that. And here I am, the teacher supposedly of that subject, to him. And now like I'm him.
Right.
So then of course we know that, emotions have a lot of what we feel and how we react to something has a lot to do with our hidden belief systems that we might not know we have. So immediately my husband started coaching me. Otherwise I was going to strangle him. So he's like, okay, yeah. let's get into the coaching. And I remembered a memory of being 8 years old and going to a birthday party with friends. And they're like everybody, and every kid's parents are there. So it's like an adult party as well. And they're talking about a guy, a doctor, a very famous Italian, really good looking, doctor. And everyone's like talking about this couple before they come, the husband and wife. So as a little child, I'm so curious about them. And when they walk in, really, they're like this really bright couple. And I remember looking at them and being like, wow, in the future, if I ever get married, like I want to, I want to be a couple like this. I want to be a power couple, because that's what they look like to me at that time. So I happened to sit right across from the husband and wife. And then at one point, my napkin falls under the table, and I go like to get the napkin. And I'm like, oh, and it was very shocking to me. I see that he's kind of like, his hand is somewhere where it shouldn't be, and definitely not on the wife. And I get shocked. I just remembered that memory of feeling like I'm being electrocuted, because back then we didn't have TV, we didn't have internet. Like I didn't even know something like the concept of cheating even exists. So that was my first experience of that. And immediately I made up my mind as an 8-year-old, oh, men that are successful and married equals cheat.
Wow.
And when I married my husband, life would have it, that's like, we got married, and then the book he wrote came out, and then like, over time, but like it was an immediate bestseller, and it ended up selling more than 1 million copies. So, and that success thing was already like there. So we got married, and he stepped into this new level of success, on behalf of both of us, really. So that belief system that was asleep,
it's got triggered.
It got triggered.
Right.
And obviously, what is jealousy? It's like the fear of, losing the person. So just because those two things came together, all of a sudden my whole emotions and the way that I know myself was different. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, this is coming from like a 8-year-old story about how marriage is.
Yeah.
It immediately got dropped, and we were just laughing for hours.
Wow. So, wow, that's pretty remarkable. That, I mean, again, it just speaks volumes of your vibration. So what you're saying is that memory was no longer a vibratory match to who you are. That belief that got triggered, or that almost, if you will, trauma that got triggered as a young person, was there. You didn't know it was there. Some, triggers with your husband's success and the marriage all at the same time. Okay, now it's there, but really it wasn't a vibratory match. And as soon as you could put it together, you could look at it and understand with awareness that's what was getting triggered, almost like a coat that didn't fit any longer. You just took it off and said, I don't need this.
Yeah,
I don't need this. Let me shed this.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like when we see what coat we're wearing and why we're wearing, and what's the originating factor of why we're wearing it. And it's just amazing. And I mean, we see this in our clients all the time too, when they can have the awareness of, oh, I'm experiencing this reality in this way, and I'm having these emotions in this way. And it's because whatever, as a 5-year-old, I decided that if I have too much money, I'll never have enough freedom, let's say. And they get that. Mm-hmm. And they find it within themselves. And then it's just we call it a being choice. When you make a new being choice after seeing how ridiculous that belief system is, or that it was just the innocence of a child's belief system that's still kind of leading you in the game, then it's just a matter of choosing to step outside of it. The minute you say, I no longer belong to this, the trajectory of your entire life shifts. And this is true for everybody.
I no longer belong to this. So like this, there's this thing that's here. Let's call it an energetic vortex of trauma and belief. There's this energetic vortex of trauma and belief that's kind of, been put on you. And you say, I no longer belong to this. And it removes that energetic vortex by disclaiming it, disowning it. Is that how you're seeing it?
Choosing out of it. Exactly. Okay. Disclaiming it, disowning it, choosing out of it. But the thing is, you can't just choose out of it just because, I don't know, somebody tells you should choose out of it. It's the awareness that you have.
Yes.
Where it's a very internal decision of like, you know what, this is ridiculous. I'm not playing this game.
Yeah. So this is a fascinating conversation, because one of the things that I work with as a coach I'd be so curious how this is going to turn out. I'm going to step out on a limb here. One of the things that I teach as a coach is stop asking why. So bear with me. Bear with me. Stop, like you can. So I was a therapist for 30 years. Okay. So
right.
I did that for a long time. So let me just play with this a minute. So I did that for a long time, like really helping people dig in and what happened and what belief, what did you make it mean? What interpretation did you have? How did that take life? It really is vibration. I love the way you teach that, Esra, that something happens, you make it mean something, and then that creates a vibratory pattern that you live in until you shed it, right? What I saw in my many years of practicing psychotherapy was that people would spend a lot of time like, why? I just wish I knew why. I just wish I was this way. And I started when I went into coaching to say, well, maybe why isn't the only question or even the most important question. So let me ask you your thoughts on this. I would tell my clients, knowing who you are and knowing who you are, what are my values? What's my purpose? How am I going to move forward in my life? And I use mission also, knowing your values, your mission, your purpose, and then meeting that awareness, right? Taking that vibratory pattern, looking at this thing, say jealousy, and to use your example, looking at this like jealous, like where did this come? This isn't who I am. And asking not why, but what am I going to do about it? How do I exactly, where you take your students, who am I going to be in the face of this so that I'm not being lived by jealousy? One of the things I teach is you're always being lived by something. So going back to your example, you were being lived by this kind of traumatic, unconscious experience that formed a belief in you. I do believe that's the course, that like something happens, you make it mean something about money, about relationships, about men, about women, whatever. Something happens, you make it mean something, and then you wrap your world of perception around that belief. But I guess I'm wondering what your thought is. Do you think it's possible without having to go back and figure out the why? Because
yes,
couldn't there be many, right? So yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
I definitely do, because I mean, there's not only one way to do anything ever.
To change your vibe.
Yeah, you can do it by changing the vibe. Although I think there were other things where I think even before the coaching got into my life, when I was in that period of the, very Kundalini practice and just seeing how much vibration makes a difference.
Yeah.
I did find this though, like when I would, get my vibration up, my whole like life and the people I'm meeting and the possibilities I'm dancing with would change. But then something would happen and I would go back about, let's say, a subject ABC, go back to how I was being.
Yeah.
Like, let's say with prosperity, for example, I would, temporarily create prosperity or temporarily create, this opportunity. So it would start coming and I'm like, yes, it's changed. That's it. From now on, it's going to be like this. And then it wouldn't be. It'd go back, or the money would disappear, or, it would be like, okay, I'm having, and now that's gone. Like, and then I would rack my head around, onto a wall and say, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Like, what did I do wrong? Which is like the worst thing to ask yourself.
Right.
It's not about wrong.
Yeah.
So then for me, at least in the prosperity department of things, it was very, very important to become aware that, as a 7-year-old, I had decided that money and love don't go together. And I had chosen back then through like a bunch of events that happened and, the stories in the book, but I had come to the conclusion one can either follow the path of love, or as in a lot of the spiritual circles as well, one can only either be spiritual or they're in the money world, as if like, the two cannot combine. So there was a separation in my reality. Plus, with all the Turkish movies I had watched, all the good guys were always the poor ones, in Turkey. It was the theme of every Turkish movie. And all the messed up people were the rich people.
Oh, boy.
So I had, growing up watching those, I was like, oh, I don't want to be one of the bad guys. I'm like, so there was a double belief.
You were conditioned, really.
Yeah, my condition. So So basically, okay, as high as my vibration can go, which is great. And as I said, I would meet opportunities and projects would come and money would start flowing in. But then in my reality, I had to like get rid of it again because of the belief system.
Because being wealthy or having money means that you're one
Yeah.
of the bad ones.
Yeah. So basically, in the way back then that I was creating my reality, since I had a gain, a benefit from not having the abundance, unconsciously, even though the opportunities started pulling in, unconsciously, I had to like get rid of it. So, to go back to your question, is it always necessary to know? No, I think sometimes without knowing, without needing to go back, you can change that trajectory. And the thing that teaches, the thing that changes the trajectory is what we call a being choice.
Mm-hmm. Say more about that.
When you make a being choice, is not a mental thing at all. Oh, I'm deciding not to have coffee anymore. No, it's a choice that you make with all of your cells. And again, it goes to that belonging thing. It's about to, like, let's say you're getting abused, in life with your husband. And you take it maybe, and for sure, there's a reason why that's happening too, via belief. Like some people have this belief that it's like connected to love somehow, so that's why they're staying in that reality. Whatever it is, the subject doesn't matter. But when you have been pushed on against through your own creation, actually, and when you've said enough is enough, like I'm done, enough is enough, I am no longer belonging to this. If you say very powerfully no to your past being choice,
yes,
then you open up the space to say yes to a new being choice. Beautiful. Of how you're going to be in the world.
How you're going to be in the world. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I love the way you say powerful, because it does take something to change the vibration. It takes something to change the trajectory of your vibratory pattern.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're such powerful beings. I mean, I believe through certain experiences I've had, I'm even going to say I know, but we are part of the creator.
Of course.
So
we are the creators.
We are
the creators. I mean, not the only creator, but there's only one entity and being, an energy that we are all a part of. The trees behind you, the chair you're sitting in, the technology that is connecting us and sharing this message with the world. There is only one. And the question is, where are we consciously going to choose to have our vibration plug us into the matrix that life is? I love that. Which leads me, there's so many things I want to ask you, because you're such a brilliant and wise teacher.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I have two questions in my mind, and I'm going to throw them both at you, and you can decide which one to pull in. Just means you're really brilliant and I'm a bad interviewer, but that's okay.
No, you're the most amazing interviewer.
So the two questions that are in my mind is, one is just starting at a very, very basic level. And like, how do you understand and define consciousness for yourself? We talked about this a little bit yesterday when we were chatting, that consciousness, there's no like clear, definitive, this is what it is in our field. And that's one of my goals with this summit, is for us to start digging that in a little bit. So that's one. And then the other is, you talked about disciplined practices as a way to awakening or living more consciously. And I would love to hear more about your disciplined practices. I know you've got your gratitude practice on video with your students. I love that. And you have Kundalini Yoga. But those are the two questions, really about, maybe start with the first one, and maybe that will guide you into the second one. How do what's your understanding of consciousness?
My understanding of consciousness is that we are infinity, individualized, playing the time and space game in the here and now.
That's so great. That is just brilliant.
And rather than always like thinking about like trying to reach a summit of like some sort of spirituality or enlightenment or whatever, It's like, first of all, how good are we playing the game in the here and now?
And what does that mean for you? How good are we playing the game in the here and now? What does good mean? And what game are you referring to?
What the game of life.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yep.
And by good, I cannot have a definition of that fits everybody. Sure. But in alignment.
Okay.
With what is good for us, and for every person is different. Are we in alignment with what we're creating? Are we happy? Are we experiencing our passion?
Yeah.
Are we, how powerfully are we using this incredible power to create that's inside of us? It could be creating a beautiful family, you know, it could be creating a beautiful business that every day you wake up enjoy for.
Excited to go to. It could be creating beautiful art or music. It could be creating beautiful friendships.
Exactly.
Creating beauty.
Creating beauty. And for me, what, you know, conscious living is, and we talked about this in a brief conversation, and I just loved your definition.
Oh, thank you. My definition of consciousness.
Well, when you said, you know, I don't think consciousness is shopping in Whole Foods and going to yoga.
Right. I mean, that's part of what inspired the summit for me. Like, I think people think that conscious living means it's what I do, not who I am. So it's not, you know, shopping at Whole Foods and taking a yoga class or reading Spirituality and Health magazine. Those are great things, but that's what you're doing. Exactly. My question is, how are you being? What is your experience of life? You know, I mean, I hate to say this, but are you the person that like goes to Sunday school, sits through a church service, and then comes home and, you know, swears at your wife and kicks the dog? And you said alignment. I love that. Like, are you aligning how you think with how you feel, with how you speak, and what you do? Is there alignment? One of the highest compliments that I receive from people is when they've heard me on stage and then they speak, you know, and talk with me after, and they're like, you're exactly the same on this platform, on the stage, or off. And I was like, of course I am, because it's just me. Like, how could I be or do anything else? I just have me to bring. But I think, you know, when there's not alignment, right? We see this perhaps a little too often, that there's one persona that gets presented, and then there's another being that gets expressed in other ways in other places. So alignment is maybe one of the discipline practices that you live inside of that brings you to consciousness and to conscious living.
Completely. I mean, haven't you ever seen like, I mean, I'm sure you have, where let's say someone's like super angry and it irritates. You know, you're like, oh, you know, maybe like, oh, I just don't want to be exposed to this person's anger right now. I can't take it. And then
I have a teenager, so yes, I have that experience on a regular basis.
And then maybe like you meet another person where they're like super angry too, but it just doesn't bother you at all. Because, and the difference is, you know, one is in judgment of being in anger within themselves, and the other is like totally in the self-allowance of even being angry.
That's so cool. Wait, so say more about that. If you are in the presence of someone who is in self-allowance of being angry, then it doesn't, if you will, spew over onto me in the same way? Is that
I mean, like, you know, when a person owns, let's say, whatever, if we want to call it a shadow, the degree that you own who you are, it's like, because there's acceptance internally, there's like automatic acceptance in the outer world too. Like even if somebody doesn't like it, they kind of don't dare to come up to you and say anything about it. You know what I mean? Or I've met people like that where I find like, oh, you know, this person's super angry, but it's so cute the way they're doing it, you know?
That's
and
so cool.
You know, in knowing the person, you realize they're like, yeah, I'm angry, so what? You know,
there's
no judgment about it.
So you're going back to self-love. So one of your discipline practices is self-love.
Yes.
I'm angry. I'm being an ass right now, but so be it.
Yeah.
I'm having a human moment. I'm embracing my humanity full on. I'm apologizing for the fact that I'm being an ass right now, but it's just part of the human experience.
Exactly. Or maybe not apologizing and saying, hey, if you have a problem, you can go over there. There's enough. There's enough room on the earth for all of us.
For all of us.
To
have our moments.
Yeah.
So go further with that conversation, right? So we've got Kundalini Yoga and self-love, and one other one that I'm not remembering. Alignment. Thank you. Alignment, Kundalini Yoga, self-love. If you had to mention a couple, and gratitude, one more that you've mentioned, but if you had to mention a couple more of like what does it mean for you, Esra, when you're living consciously? I know it means more than taking a yoga class and going to Whole Foods, but what does it mean for you? What are some of the other things? Because I really want, you have so much to teach and so much experience. So what are some of the other things that support your awakening and your continued walk as a conscious being, living a conscious life?
I mean, if I had to define conscious living for me, I would say it's the capacity. I would say two things. One is, how aware am I? And I'm not always aware, and sometimes I can't find the answers either.
Sure.
I go to my coach and say, "Oh, what's going on over here?"
Right.
But it's like, how aware are we as the powerful creators that we all are, whether we are in remembrance of that or not, whether we believe that or not, I don't care. We are all spirits. We are all very powerful creators. So for me, conscious living, and for my husband, I know it's the same. It's like the ability to see how we're setting up our own reality.
Oh, I got to say that again. The ability to see how we are setting up our own reality. Wait, what? You mean it's not happening to me?
Exactly.
So so say more. The ability to realize how we're setting up our own reality. Say more about that.
Yeah. And so going back to the example of feeling, jealous when we got married.
Yeah.
Of course, it was a very painful feeling, especially when you don't see that as like, oh, this is never my identity. I've never been this. Right. No, we're everything. All of us are everything. And in the capacity to be everything at any given time.
Of course, yeah.
So, I really like if I didn't see how I was setting my own reality up and taking that responsibility, maybe we would have gotten divorced. And it would have been like so unnecessary. Right. So I think it is very kind of, wise and also very practical. And it goes for like for something small to something big, to be in the awareness as the creator that I am. How am I setting up this reality for myself? And what would it be like if I wanted to play a better game?
Keep going. How would it be like so again, I'm listening through the lens of somebody who's just up against it. Maybe their finances are screwed and maybe they've got health issues, and they're like, and here you are, I'm going to be a conscious creator, and where that could be really hard to hear.
It is very hard, and it would probably not be the right thing to say to a person in that state either.
Okay, got it. So great. What would you say? What would you say to a person?
I would say this. Listen, I get it. You're feeling awful. I've been there. There were days in my life where I felt like, oh my God, like, just like take me out of this earth. I don't want to be here. Yeah. But I'll tell you this much. If you're being the victim, you cannot belong to the solution.
Ooh, oh, wait, hold on. If you're being the victim, I really want our listeners to take this in, because there's some place in your life right now today that you are being the victim to something. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's the economy, maybe it's your health, maybe it's politics, I don't know. But if you're being the victim, you cannot be a part of the solution. Because I'm going to just add, and I'm sure you align with this, they're not the same vibration. As Einstein says, you cannot solve the problems that you've created with the same level of consciousness that created them. So you have to up-level, elevate your vibe, raise your consciousness, change your beliefs, change your thoughts, change your emotions, experience gratitude, notice abundance. I say to people who are struggling financially, go home and make a list of all of the things that you have an abundance of, including things like socks and knives and forks and coffee cups. Like, what do you have an abundance, right?
Yes, totally.
Just look around. And if you don't have an abundance of that, walk through the woods, walk on the beach, come back and tell me how many pebbles of sand you were able to capture. And it's a game changer. So there's so many things you can do when you recognize that if you're being the victim, you can't create the solution. That's just brilliant. That's what I love.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like that. I would say to the person, like, at least if you're going to stay in the victim mode, just don't look for a solution, because it ain't gonna right.
Yeah.
Like, don't waste your energy trying to find the solution from that space. Enjoy the
ease of being the victim.
Exactly. And because you at one point you get sick of it. And I mean, I was a queen of victimhood, so I know the game very well. I'm not like coming from a place of not understanding what it feels like to feel so sorry for yourself, feel like, oh, nobody cares, oh my God, I'm never going to find a solution. I've been there. I know how that game works. I mean, of course, when you're in it, you think that's the end all be all. You think it's real. You think people who don't have sympathy for that state, don't get you. You're all alone. Da 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 da. We all go in and out of these spaces, but at least to understand that in that state, you do not belong to the solution.
Yeah.
And the reason is not because being a victim is such a thing. No, it's because you're powerful. You can't find a solution.
Say again. It's because
you're powerful in essence that you cannot find the solution.
I don't understand that.
I know. I'm just going to go into, I got to give the example. I wanted to throw in that curve there, like very
I'm like, wait, what? You're powerful. That means you are the solution. And you're saying because you're powerful, you can't find the solution. So go on.
So if we think of life being like a perfect mirror of who we're choosing to be.
Life is a perfect mirror of who I'm choosing to be. I love that.
When you're saying I don't have has to be reflected. When you say I'm not good enough, the good enough has to be reflected back.
Or this is hard.
The hard has to be reflected back in some way or another. So you are at that moment experiencing exactly what you're claiming. How is that not powerful?
That is super powerful. Life is a mirror of who you are.
Who you're choosing to be.
Who you're choosing to be in the moment, right?
Plus,
you can change that.
This whole perception of like, oh, poor thing and poor us and poor, me. And I'm telling you, I was the queen of poor me. But when we're in the state of victim, instead of like approaching the person, which is like what we do from a place of like, oh, I understand you, I hear you, da da da. Immediately when we're coaching, and actually we kind of don't even coach in that state, let's say, because it's not possible in that, you cannot.
Exactly right. You're exactly right.
But of course, when you have big workshops or certifications and it's not, specifically one-on-one, then, people do come sometimes as a total victim, sometimes a victim being a victim in a certain subject. And the first place we go to is getting them to figure out what's their benefit in staying in the victim mode.
Exactly.
And when they can find that, and for me, getting me out was like my victim mode was to try to get love from the outside world. When I was in that state, it's like, oh, if somebody like feels sorry enough for me, that means therefore that they love me. So that could be one game.
It's juicy, right?
It is juicy.
Being in the victim mode, I mean, it's easier. You don't have to expend as much energy. You don't have to do the work. It's way easier. And I mean, there are multiple payoffs for staying in that space. And people, it takes something. It takes coaching and somebody mirroring that back to you to really go in and claim, I'm creating this because there are some benefits.
There's some benefits, exactly.
Some payoffs.
There was a lady I was coaching where, she was, her husband had paid the money and sent her off, to a life coach. And, she's like, yeah, I want to better myself. I want to do this. I want to do that. But like, you can tell immediately if the person's just saying that or if their energetics are there. And I could clearly see she is dead set on staying in the I can't game. I can't. I'm trying, but I can't. That was her mantra. I'm trying, but I can't. So I'm like, listen, we got to find the benefit of why you're saying in the I can't, because this is what you're really very powerfully choosing. And therefore, and she was being sent to a different, like she was in an English class. She couldn't learn the English. She was in the coaching. She didn't have a license, so she was taking driving lessons. She couldn't do that either. So that's like pretty powerful,
Yeah.
you know, to say like not to be able to do anything. Come on,
That's a lot of I can't.
powerful.
Yeah, right.
That's a lot of I can't, and practicing the I can't in a powerful way.
Yeah.
So anyway, we dug into it, and her aha was she realized the reason she was staying in the victim mode and the I can't story was to stop the husband from leaving her.
Security.
Because she knew that if she like was on her, because apparently they were having problems, he wanted to like leave the relationship, but was feeling sorry for her. Like, what's she gonna do without me, kind of a thing. So the husband's like trying to like get her, you know, self-betterment to her so he can leave in peace and without feeling guilty. And so her reason of being, but look, I can't, I'm trying, but I can't, is to make sure the husband stays put exactly where he is.
Right.
How is that not powerful?
That is super, super powerful. I love it. I love talking to you. I love being around you. I love your vibe, your energy, your teaching. I'm going to have to keep creating summits just so I can have you on them. That's what I'm thinking. So, Esra, I have one last question. Thank you so much for your wisdom. It's just delightful to be with you. But I do have one last question that I like to ask all of my teachers that are on this summit. And that is, what is your hope for humanity as we move into this phase of awakening and conscious living?
My hope for humanity is everyone being on track for more self-love that they give themselves, instead of looking for it, asking for it from the outside world.
So beautiful. Self-love, self-love, self-love. It's pretty much what the universe is made of, is love.
Yes.
Hey, I want to mention powerfully that you just published a fantastic book that I have and read. It's just wonderful. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Sure. The book is called Money Does Grow on Trees.
Yes, it does.
And it's very funny because certain interviews I'm doing right now, like the hosts, they're all so wonderful, but many times it gets introduced as, and money doesn't grow on trees.
Right.
And it's like, no, money does grow on trees.
And what's the subtitle? It's really
the
lovely.
Myths We Create and Live By.
The Myths We Create and Live By. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. I love your story. You and I both have kind of trials to triumph, tragedy to triumph stories around money and being a victim and being drama queens. I like to say I've gone from homeless to 7 figures and batshit crazy to relatively sane. That's
That's why you are so colorful. Thank God you had, all these extreme experiences.
I did.
So and beautiful.
It is. Life is just so rich and beautiful and magical. And I'm grateful that my vibratory pattern attracted you and brought you into it. I'm grateful to our mutual friend, Dea Chandera, who introduced us. And I'm grateful for you being on these summits, sharing your wisdom, sharing your love. On September 18th, you and I are going to be together on the live event, the Celebration of Conscious Living. And you'll be one of the people that will be a featured speaker on that. I look forward to our co-creation of that live event right in the middle of this Conscious Living Summit on September 18th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So you'll have another opportunity to address a live audience, our listeners, for this delightful 2 weeks of waking up and being engaged with the Conscious Living Summit. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's always my pleasure. We can talk as much as you like.